except maybe their own members. Yeah, they may scare their own members a great deal indeed. As far as I know it, the surest sign of decadence in a social and political movement is its engagement in the suppression of internal dissent. Such a decadence now erodes the moral core of our environmental movement. Stray beyond the margins of permitted discourse. Publicly critique the prevailing losing strategy. Strike out in an unauthorized new direction, and the overlords of the environmental movement crack down. They enfilade the insurgents with legalistic maledictions, gag orders, accusations of sedition. Witness the Sierra Club's threats to sue renegade chapters that publicly opposed anti-wilderness bills in Montana, or its attacks on anti-war protesters in the club's ranks in Utah, of all places, or the Natural Resources Defense Council's attempt to squelch the filing of endangered species petition for on-the-run critters like the Queen Charlotte's goshawk, a bird of the deep ancient forest of the Pacific Northwest coast, or the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund's arm-twisting of its own clients in the spotted owl cases, or the Environmental Defense Fund's betrayal of at-risk communities across America when it endorsed Dow Chemical's proposed revamping, i.e. gutting, of the Superfund Act. At the time, the head of the Environmental Defense Fund was a guy by the name of Fred Krupp. And Fred Krupp was once overheard telling Carol Browner, Clinton's head of the Environmental Protection Agency, at a time when they were gutting regulations right and left, "You are our general. We are your troops. We await your orders." Or how about the sadomasochistic pleasure that NRDC, yes, them again, displayed while boasting about, quote, breaking the back of the environmental opposition to NAFTA? Sear these things into your consciousness. You don't have to be versed in the works of Hannah Arendt or Michel Foucault, although I think Madness and Civilization ought to be required reading for all activists and other eccentrics, to understand the dynamics of power and repression at work here. Activists now find themselves as being aliens on the political landscape. Their relationship to the lawyers, the lobbyists, the economists, the marketing agents, the PR flacks, and the CEOs that manage the environmental movement parallels that of welfare mothers to welfare bureaucrats, back when we had a welfare system in this country. It's a kind of abusive indifference. To quote Joseph Heller, something happened. Somewhere along the line, the environmental movement disconnected with the people and the lights, rejected its political roots, pulled the plug on its vibrant and militant tradition. It packed its bags, starched its shirts, and jetted to Washington, D.C., where it became what it once despised, a risk-aversive, depersonalized, hyper-analytical, humorless, access-driven, intolerant, centralized, technocratic, deal-making, passionless, direct-mailing, lawyer-laden monolith to mediocrity. A monolith with feet of clay. The environmental movement didn't so much go awry as it simply flatlined. It cruise-controlled right into an entropic cool-down, which is the ultimate thermodynamic fate of all closed systems. Gangrene now manifest all the intensity of an insurance cartel. Their executives and administrative underlings are much more likely to own dog-eared copies of Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal, or God forbid, Henry Kissinger's Diplomacy, than Donald Worcester's Rivers of Empire, Edward Abbey's Down the River, or Doug Peacock's Grisly Years. Forget the eyes. In a lot of ways, a person's bookshelf is the real window into their soul. National environmental policies are now engineered by an axis of acronyms, also known as the axis of evil. EDF, NRDC, WWF, groups without voting memberships and little responsibility to the wider environmental movement. They are the undisputed mandarins of techno-talk and lobbyist logic who gave us the ecological oxymorons of our time: pollution credits, recreated wetlands, sustainable development. In their relativistic milieu, everything can be traded off or dealt away. For them, the tag-end remains of the native ecosystems on our public lands are endlessly divisible, and every loss can be recast as a hard-won victory in the advertising copy of their fundraising propaganda. Settle and move on is their unapologetic mantra. And don't expect them to stick around to live with the consequences of their deals and their trade-offs. Don't expect them to ever come back to the scene of their political crimes. Into this political vacuum, rough beasts have already been loosed, and others are bound to follow. The decline of a militant environmental movement has been countered by the rise of a militant anti-environmental movement, unrestrained and all too often encouraged by the agents of federal and state governments. The new anti-environmental movement, a strange hybrid of Aryan nationist, gun fetishist, and the lunar incarnations of the wise use crowd, funded by big oil and big coal and big nuke, have used arson, muggings, and death threats to intimidate local environmental activists all across the West. And the ranks of this malicious melange continue to expand up and down the spine of the Rockies and across the Great Basin. Like deranged deadheads on tour, these neo-militians follow roving weapons bazaars, some of which were reportedly backed by the arms merchant and Iran-Contra star Richard Secord. Across the rural backwaters of the American West, from Libby, Montana to Tonopah, Nevada, at these movable conclaves of righteousness, the blonde, blue-eyed penitents can purchase enough firepower to call forth the second coming, a stated goal of some attendees. Here's the defense dividend we've all been waiting for, where the largesse of the Pentagon is offered for sale on the home front at discount prices: armor-piercing bullets, APCs, night vision gun sights, Humvees. It's all there for the bidding, and bidding they are. Living embodiments they are of the quaint cultural traditions of the West, memorialized at places like Wounded Knee and Sand Creek. These characters are preparing to defend what's theirs and what they think ought to be theirs, by force if necessary, perhaps preferably. What do they want? Simply unfettered rights to grazing, mining, logging on public lands. They want the federal lands themselves revested to the states or private corporations. And to quote one Idaho rancher, a guy by the name of Arlie Gruder from somewhere near Salmon, Idaho, arguably America's most inhospitable town for an environmentalist, Arlie said, "What we want to do is to run all the damn feds, Jews, spics, and homo-enviros the hell out of here." Okay. But run them back where? Back across the 100th meridian? No doubt about that. But how far? Back to Brooklyn? Back to Juarez? Back to Buchenwald? Listen to Hugh McKean, a rancher and former commissioner in Catron County, New Mexico, who told me that his neighbors and friends are arming themselves, preparing for a new range war against Greens and their sidekicks, the illegal immigrants. The people have fought for this land in the past, he said. There have been killings over water. It runs in our genes. You have You have very independent people out here. They want to be left alone. But the government oppresses us. And the environmentalists come in here and they want to oppress our life. Apparently, the West is theirs to waste by virtue of the doctrine of manifest genetics. The absence of a forceful opposition from progressive Greens and the appearance reality of collaboration with the federal government by the Beltway Greens only strengthens the cause of the extreme right. As the left migrates toward the center, the right repels further to the right, and the government follows suit. My friends, this is a recipe for a future in which things, to quote Thomas Pynchon, will be not quite so amusing. Still, there's no reason to begin strumming a death song just yet. Beneath the six-figure salaries, the limo-driven executives, the glossy magazines clotted with ads for SUVs, there's a flickering pulse to the grassroots environmental movement. In the hinterlands, in the barrios, in the secret gardens of the Bronx, amid the toxic detritus of New Orleans. Michel Foucault and Tom Paine sang the same refrain. The more pervasive the repression, the more profound the rebellion that will come. We've got to start that rebellion. And in fact, it has been started by small groups across the country. In the Southwest, a small group called Living Rivers is campaigning to decommission Glen Canyon Dam and restore the mighty Colorado River so that it once again flows into Mexico, where it belongs. In Montana, the Alliance for the Wild Rockies remains the grizzly bear's most unflinching ally and advocate. In the Pacific Northwest, the Western Land Exchange Project is nearly alone in challenging the disposal of public lands to private concerns. And the Center for Environmental Equity is chasing the big gold mining companies out of Oregon. In the Midwest, Heartwood is defending the incredibly diverse hardwood forest of the Ohio Valley and waging an intense campaign against the proliferation of noxious and inhumane confined animal feeding operations, or CAFCOs. In the heart of Cancer Alley, Louisiana Environmental Action Network, also known as LEAN, is taking on chemical and oil companies, as well as the toxic sludge left behind by Katrina. In South Dakota, the Lakota Student Alliance is waging a courageous battle to have the Black Hills and other sacred lands returned to the Sioux Nation. Deep in Appalachia, Save Our Cumberland Mountains is fighting the most destructive form of mining ever devised by man or Satan, mountaintop removal. Like snow peaks sprouting from a far horizon, these scattered pockets of resistance can help us triangulate our way back home. They can. Because they call us to a resolute clarity of place. And that move, going back home, as Terry Tempest Williams suggests in her shimmering book, The Unspoken Hunger, may be the most radical act of all. Environmentalism was once a people's cause, unaligned with any political party, independent from the demands of the shadowy syndicate of mega foundations, Pew, Rockefeller, Ford, that now hold the mortgage on the movement. These high priests of what Foucault called condescending philanthropy. Environmentalism was once driven by a desire for social justice and an unremitting passion for the wild. We need to tap back into those populist currents. Let the vision attract the money, and don't allow it to be refracted through the ideological prism of neoliberal foundations. The power of the environmental movement, the power of our movement derives from its essential and shared imagery, its sensual tangibilities. Simply put, the destruction of the wild sparks a militancy in the heart. At least it does for me. Wild places communicate their own passion and power, sensations that are the antithesis of political abstractions. It's all about the singular sense of openness on the Snake River plains, the way the light plays across ancient petroglyphs on the canyon walls of Navajo sandstone outside of Moab, Utah, the smell of sagebrush in the high desert on the north slope of the Ruby Mountains in Nevada, the cool rush of wind unleashed by distant storms hammering the Gallatin Range in Montana, the blue-gray fog banks that sleeve up the North Santiam River Canyon on an August morning in Oregon, the crisp shock of being busted out of a raft by a rapid on the Selway River in Idaho, the carcass of a grizzly clean salmon annealed by the Alaskan sun to a granite boulder along the McNeil River, the surrealistic explosion of October color from a dense forest of oaks, poplars, and maples on Nebo Ridge in southern Indiana, the cry of a lone coyote trembling across the sepia sky in the pre-dawn Badlands of South Dakota. These are the threatened images that haunt my nights, the green fires that burn in my soul. I'm sure you have your own. Nearly everybody does. Everybody with a heart. The power of the people can still overwhelm the influence of big money. Look at Chiapas. Listen to Mandela and Evo Morales. Anything is possible. Find your place. Take a stand. People will join you.